So as we get the microphones out to take some questions, let me start off with a quick question on all of you seem to be accessing, getting technology and content directly to the children and connecting them up. I wonder, what do you feel the role of the teacher is in this process?
Well, ours actually doesn't go through the student. Mathalicious wouldn't make sense as a kind of self-directed learning experience. You know, where we're aiming in Bloom's taxonomy is very much on the higher level, you know, the higher order thinking skills. And so I tend to be really skeptical, actually, of educational technology platforms that go directly to the student because, one, they can really only focus on really low-level basic skills because that's what you can write a program around. So for us, like, ours are classroom lessons for classroom teachers, and they would not make sense otherwise. You can't have a conversation about whether Nike should charge people with small feet less in a way that's kind of one-to-one. So for us, I mean, the teacher is the center of the entire thing.
Yeah, I think there's a huge sort of debate. The interesting thing about the education and learning space right now is that it's really polarizing, right, in like 15 different dimensions. And there's a huge debate about, is the teacher, you get rid of the teacher totally, or like you empower the teacher totally? And the answer is, like everything else, we don't really know yet, right? And so I think that some of the, and it's never going to be one side or the other, some of the work that we're doing, and so we're investing in a lot of different things and seeing what works. It seems to us that it's important to give the teacher support, right? It seems that these teachers, as a resource there, need stuff. And in a lot of the environments we're working, if you bring in technology and give it to the kids, right, and don't have the teachers involved in that, you have created such an enmity between the teachers and that new thing that they'll shut it down. And so we've seen many, many schools where you've got like cool laptops or desktops or whatever locked up away. On the other hand, if you just focus on the teachers and don't focus on like how you give better skills to kids, you also create another divide. So I think the answer is that it's somewhere in the middle, and that we have to be, right now, sort of egoless about looking at a variety of different placements on those spectra.
Yeah, and I think our view is that it's actually a balance, so it's along the lines of what Chris said. I mean, our deployments always go first to the teacher. They have to go first to the teacher. If you give it first to the teacher and the students at the same time, here's what happens. The students have a lot more free time. They take it home. They use it all evening. They inevitably get much better at it than the teacher, and then the teachers start to feel intimidated because the students are teaching them, and guess what? They take them, they put them on the shelf. And so for us, it has to go to the teacher first. And to be honest, it's largely because in the communities that we're looking to deal with outside, let's say, North America, the teachers need to consume the content themselves because oftentimes it's not actually something that they're that well versed in. So it's both getting comfort with the technology and consuming the content. But they have to feel like they're masters of this sort of thing. So our original deployment actually had the games. We have games are unlocked by playing time. When you do exercises, we actually changed it so that the teachers control the codes. And so it could be anything that's good behavior. The teacher says, here's a code you get access to.
Okay, thank you. Again, at the back.
First of all, I'd like to say, one of the things that I think is really right with this last project, so in Kenya, when I've been working, it's interesting that $60 was okay and $80 was too much. And so the $50 price tag is really important, that actually, you know, when people were talking about the $100 laptop, it was somehow too much for local schools in rural areas, and somehow below 60 was okay. And so that, first of all, I'd like to say, well done for getting that right. The other thing which I'm really pleased to be hearing is this discussion about how it's really important to keep the teachers on board but get the content directly to the kids, which is, again, exactly the experience we found that works. My question is, in some sense, if this, and I think there's good evidence that this can work and be scaled in interesting ways, most of the models I've seen have been about trying to get deployments which are paid for externally or in big bulks. One of the things we looked at was getting it so that, you know, there was an initial investment and then the school was able to do it through school fees of different sorts. That actually you're paying, if you're at school for 4 years, you're paying of the order of $15 a year to get it over a 4-year period, and at the end of that period you've bought it. Is this something which people are looking into?
Yeah, I mean, I think, by the way, you're absolutely right. I mean, so first of all, that price point, they're very, very price sensitive. And it's worth making the point that the reason I even did this, or decided to found this, because I'd worked on emerging market cell phones years ago. And I still remember that one of the companies we invested in, the CEO actually said, between $60 and $40, you'll more than double your addressable market. that $20 drop more than doubles the addressable market. And it happened about 4 or 5 years later after developed countries picked up cell phones. The scale of manufacturing drove the cost down. Same thing's happening with tablets. As far as financing mechanisms, we're quite creative about it, but we have to work sort of with our partners and what they want to do with it. But I think that's a really good idea, frankly, because if they pay for it themselves, you need to come up with some kind of financing mechanism that they can afford it over time.
Cool. So maybe I can do a hand-raising question. Can you raise your hands if you like really hard, complex problems? Who in this audience? Okay, so some people don't, some people do. Okay, for everybody who does, the answer to that question is that, and I don't know that, this is not like truth, this is kind of Chris truth. So there's a bit of a difference there, but this is based on what we've seen in these projects. We tried a project about 3 or 4 years ago that was in this exact space, and it failed because the price point was wrong. Our price point was about twice as much as I think the system could have sustained, and it was to get access to education to 1.5 million kids in one of our regions. The price point that was twice as much as I think it should have been, and we're redoing this project now, was by the end of a 3-year run of this program for 1.5 million kids, $7 per kid per year. That price point was twice as much as the system could afford. So if you're looking at doing these, anybody can do a pilot with 1,000 kids. That is super easy. You do it 10,000 kids, have whatever price point you want. To do it at scale, $3 per kid per year by year 3 gives you a ballpark of where you need to be. That's a tough problem.
Thanks. Do you have something to add?
I guess I'll take my own, I guess I'll ask for my own survey. Can you raise your hand if you've been a classroom teacher or have worked in curriculum? So that's awesome to see so many people raising their hands, because one thing that strikes me is, I'm not going to address, I think, the pricing issue directly, but one thing that I personally kind of concerned about, and I think it's come to characterize a lot of the conversation around OER, like we need OER, or we need it to be tech, is what's lost is the question of quality. Right, so when we look at, Ted brought up Khan Academy yesterday, like when we look at Khan Academy, what it is objectively is he's lecturing through YouTube. And he's teaching the same way teachers have taught for generations. But because it's on YouTube, it's a revolution. If it's in the classroom, it's a tragedy, but if it's on YouTube, it's a revolution. And which is not to malign what Sal Khan has done. It's really valuable, but the point I'm trying to make is that you said that the goal was internet, and the goal, it should be content. Actually, the goal should be a really good educational experience. And I think we're losing expertise, and I think we're losing a nuanced and important conversation around how kids actually learn in the name of, let's just get kids devices and we'll package it with a bunch of stuff, because that stuff may be really bad.
Thanks. Okay, there's a question over here. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Develop relationships with less affluent schools and having kids in classrooms work together with your products?
Sorry, you mean in North America or abroad, or?
Yeah. So, sorry. Oh, sorry. Having schools in North America either partner with schools abroad or partner with other schools in North America that are less affluent.
We haven't. It's come up, but I'd say, so A, I think that's a good idea, and it's something we would definitely do. And B, we would, it's worth pointing out, we would never do anything without a local partner. So we don't get in the business of distributing them to children or anything like that. We facilitate the creation of devices and the loading of the content from all the sources that exist, and we have the layer and gamification and so on, but we'll never actually distribute them.
Okay.
So we'll always use partners.
Yeah.
So question right at the back. Yep.
Yes, I just wanted to try and tie this panel into the broader focus of this conference, which is computer-based math and enabling change in the math curriculum through technology. So Mathalicious, for example, the one critical way to view it would be, you're giving teachers a way to teach the current curriculum better and connect the current curriculum to students more effectively. And on the tablet side, you could argue, what's the value of giving kids a tablet so they can understand the quadratic formula better? To use everyone's favorite example, we have to make sure that we're focusing on topics that, in the math curriculum and all these innovations that we're talking about. I think it's important in this context to focus on what's really revolutionary, what's really worth teaching, and what's worth what should the kids really be learning.
Anyone like to take that?
Yeah, I will nod agreement.
Yeah. We'll take that as a statement. There was a question, 2 rows in front. Actually, behind you was raising. Oh, no, changed your mind? Okay, then perhaps this lady here. Yes.
Hi, this question is for Karim Ani. I've been using Mathalicious for the past year. With great success, the students have really been engaged and really thinking about how to make math relevant in their real lives. For example, we did a lesson on the Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare. And I have to say that there are not a lot of adults that would be able to speak intelligently about what the Health Care Act was about. But I think bringing a lot of relevance and seeing the fact that they could make sense of the world through the mathematical lens really is what part of the goal is, that what I'm trying to do in the classroom. So my question is, what are the next steps going forward? What do you envision Mathalicious doing with regard to reaching out to engaging students?
Well, that's awesome that you guys had that conversation. And thanks for your comment. Thanks for using this stuff. Classroom teacher, right? And so I'll tie it back. I don't think any of us were trying to kind of foul off the comment you were making. Yes, we need to tie it back to computer-based math, but when you're in a conference about computer-based math, that presumes that computer-based math is possible. And I think there are certain places where it is, but I think, and where it is possible, fostering basic skills, procedural fluency, it's great, we should do it, it's scalable, it's less expensive. But there's a point at which it's not, right? And this conversation, a classroom teacher engaging students to really think about healthcare and fairness and whatever, like that's probably a place where technology isn't going to offer very much. And again, I think that's just as you go up higher in the taxonomy. So to answer your question directly, where we are now is we're continuing to bet on all these lessons for middle and high school. Starting in January, we're going to be releasing project extensions. So now instead of a 2-day core lesson, we can help teachers transition into project-based learning. So that's what's on our kind of
Thanks.
medium
And
range.
another question in the same spot.
So I guess it's a comment and then ask for a response. It goes back to this question of where's the teacher in this, and that I think probably Joe Bowler can speak to this as much as anybody. That learning takes place in a social context. It's more effective in a social context, and so that when students are working together with each other and have good direction from a teacher, but then maybe the question is this notion of technology and these kinds of things isolating students from each other. Some of the social media does that. So where's that kind of tightrope to walk between putting the technology in the hand that separates them, but providing a context for social collaboration for learning?
So thanks for that. I think there's a big difference between a social context and a physical context. And I think that that's a scary difference for a lot of people to think about. But everything has changed in the last 15 years. And when we think about social, I think that there's a whole boundary of stuff that's been totally wiped out by the way that communication technology allows people to interact. We don't know what that means, totally. But we do know that if our goal, and so I'd actually kind of even go one level further than you on the goal of this stuff. I think that it is about providing a good educational experience. I think it's about providing young people with access to opportunity and choice at the end of all of that, right? And so if that's kind of the goal that we're aiming for, I think social can be a variety of things. I think learning can happen in a variety of places. And I think we need to be open. It's scary for me to think about online learning, but we need to be open to what the new world offers us. So again, that's answering your question with another kind of question and open horizon.
Okay, over here.
Extending that to linear algebra and differential equations and these other areas. So can you talk about your funding model for that and the time resources that you guys use to start creating some of that content? And if you have any suggestions for how I can, kind of proceed, or if anybody else if Mathalicious is going to get geared into higher education, or?
I don't know. For us, the way that we approach things, this is a question we get all the time from elementary teachers. And the answer we give typically is not very satisfactory to them. The way that we approach things, we're not trying to be a core curriculum, right? So we have the luxury of saying, have video game consoles followed Bohr's law, and then break down the math, and it ends up being exponential growth. So there are a lot of areas in mathematics that we're not going to touch. Maybe differential equations is one of them. Certainly, simplifying polynomials is one of them, right? Because that's just not something that is derived from a real-world context, at least that we've found. So if we wander into that territory, then we'll gladly do, but it would just have to come from an authentic question. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Okay, at the back. Oh, sorry, there's one here. Okay, you first, please.
Conrad always talks about the tether point, and what we're still talking about the 5%. 95% of the cost of education is teacher salaries. I'm retired. I'm loving it. Okay, but we're still talking about the 5%. Okay, now the lady was talking, Hester or whatever. I'm not good with names. I'm a math person. But she made two points. She said, number one, it's got to be child-centered, and number two, without a teacher. Okay, so we keep looking about how to spend that 95%. Well, how about if we talk about ways that we can get down to 90%? Why can't we focus on her idea as opposed to keep reinventing the wheel?
Anyone like to respond? Okay, let's take another question back then.
I just want to make a comment based on your comment a little bit earlier about computer-based versus computer-assisted, because I think that got a little bit lost, particularly in the comment on the Mathalicious front. I actually think Mathalicious is doing what I would count in many respects as some computer-based math. But computer-assisted seems to me assisting the delivery of the subject that exists by doing it much better with modern technology, which is clearly very important. I still think we haven't quite got to the nub of how do we change the subject on the basis that the subject is the wrong subject. I don't think most of history, when it's taught around the world, is the wrong subject, but I think math is 70 or 80%. The point of this conference is 70 or 80% probably the wrong subject. It's not matching the real world. It's not conceptually empowering. It could be much better in subject matter. And I think, so one of the questions I have is, all of the things that have been said, I completely understand and concur with, but I'm still not seeing, maybe because it's never happened before, how a subject that's so general as mathematics gets changed to a new subject. Or do we start a new subject and run math out of business?
That's it. Yeah, well, and just to clarify it, to clarify the kind of pushing back on the, I absolutely think that there are places where technology needs to be part of it. Because, and I think the work that y'all are doing, is like a step in the right direction for sure. And my whole point was, there are places where technology is going to be really impactful, and we just need to be careful that the conversation doesn't start with, let's use technology. Let's kind of start with the goal of having, and I'm not saying you are, but I think there's
one clarification. I mean, the only case I think that's important is where technology is what drives the real world subject. Because I think in that case, the real world subject doesn't exist without the technology. And that is the case with a bunch of math now. So that's the only case where I think, I mean, totally agree. We don't want to say, let's pick a piece of technology and because it looks nice, let's figure out that that's going to be better. So I think that is a case where we need to think of it to some extent, where it's changed the subject.
Your larger question, though, I think is a really good one, which is kind of this like existential question about what is math and what's the purpose of math. Because certainly we've built a structure that is a lot of simplifying radicals and a lot of polynomials and quadratic equation, which has kind of become the thing that we're keying on. It would be great if we could kind of flip a switch. I imagine it's going to take a long time, to get there, but certainly thinking that and having it is a good thing to do.
Chris? I mean, I think that goes to the question of how you attack any complex system, right? Like, do you go straight at it? Do you hope that you can infect it and make it change fractally from the inside, or do you an end run around it? And again, I think that we're at a space where we don't know which of those three, or maybe more, will end up being the answer or part of the answer.
It's not an either or. It's not an either or. Yeah, it's going to be all that.
Do you want to say anything?
Need a tether point.
So I just wanted to, I think this is really exciting, and I just wanted to pick up on this particular point. I spent the morning traveling on the number 2 train from Flatbush Avenue here, and I take very seriously the issue of opportunity and choice. And it always occurs to me whenever I take this trip that I pass by Wall Street on my way from Brooklyn here, and there are many, many, many people, and as some of the panelists sort of are Wall Street folks. And while I really think that these are wonderful efforts, both Mathalicious and the Rumi tablet, I think that there is something that needs to be transformative in order to engage the children in Brooklyn just as much as you need to engage the kids in Rwanda. And I think that this is the distinction that I'm hoping will be elicited in our conference. I think there is something fundamental about shifting the space, like not doing just surge. I've taken a look at the site, not doing surge and exponential graphs in the same way, but finding a fundamentally different way to engage with the questions of the world. And I think that this is something that while it's not a criticism, but simply to say that there is this opportunity for genuine transformation, which I think is aided by sort of the technological tools, and I'm hoping that we will embrace that.
I'd love to hear the feedback on that, but we've now overrun our session, I think, so it's time for us to thank our panelists for their contribution.